June 12, 1945, New York Harbor. The metal gangplank slams down with a sound like a rifle shot. 147 German women prisoners freeze at the top, hands gripping the rails, knuckles white. Below them, American soldiers line both sides with weapons drawn. The air smells of salt and gunpowder. One woman whispers a prayer. Another closes her eyes, waiting for the order to shoot. They are nurses. They are enemies. They have spent 11 days crossing the Atlantic expecting execution. But what happens in the next 60 seconds will shatter everything they know about war, about America, about what it means to survive. These are not soldiers. These are young women, most barely in their 20s, who spent years watching boys bleed out on operating tables from Berlin to the frozen hell of the Eastern Front. Hannah Kleiner, 23 years old, carries a notebook with 312 names written inside. Every German soldier she watched die. She wonders if her own name will be added to an American's list today. Liesl Hartmann, 24, performed an emergency amputation by candlelight when the generator failed at -30 degrees. The soldier survived, but his screaming still echoes in her dreams. Anna Weber, 26, treated burn victims in Dresden the night 25,000 people died in Allied firebombs. Her hands still carry scars from touching charred skin. Now they stand at the entrance to enemy territory, the richest nation on earth. The country their leaders told them was filled with monsters who showed no mercy to prisoners. For 11 days at sea, they whispered the same questions in the darkness below deck. Will they beat us? Will they starve us? Will they make us disappear into labor camps and forget we ever existed? Nazi propaganda had spent years painting Americans as brutal savages. Now these women were about to discover the truth. The first woman steps down. Her boot hits American soil. Nothing happens. No gunshot. No shouting. She takes another step, then another. Behind her, the other 146 women begin moving single file down the gangplank. Their footsteps echo like a drumbeat against metal. Armed guards stand motionless on both sides. Their faces show no emotion, no hatred, no anger, just professional stillness. At the bottom, a woman in American military uniform steps forward. She is tall, with graying hair pinned beneath her cap. Colonel Margaret Harper, senior officer in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps. She raises her hand, and the German nurses stop walking. Silence falls across the dock. Even the seagulls go quiet. Then Colonel Harper speaks, in German. Her accent is rough but clear. You are prisoners of war, but you are also nurses. You will be sent to military hospitals across the United States. There you will assist in the care of wounded American soldiers. You will be treated with the respect due to medical personnel under the Geneva Convention. Hannah Kleiner's breath catches in her throat. Respect from the enemy. This has to be a trick. A lie to make them cooperate before the real punishment begins. But there is no punishment. Instead, American personnel guide them toward waiting vehicles. Not prison trucks with barred windows. Not armored transports with chains. Red Cross ambulances. Civilian buses with cushioned seats. The doors open. Hands reach out to help them climb aboard. No one shoves. No one shouts. No one points a weapon. The buses roll north into New Jersey. Through the windows, the German nurses see America for the first time. Green trees untouched by bombs. Paved roads without craters. Neat houses with gardens and automobiles parked in driveways. Everything looks whole, clean, alive. Hannah presses her forehead against the cool glass and thinks of Berlin, where entire neighborhoods have been reduced to smoking rubble, where refugees walk with everything they own tied in bedsheets, where children freeze to death waiting for trains that never come. Here, American children play in yards. Women hang laundry on clotheslines. Shops have glass windows that are not shattered. The contrast is so painful, it feels like a knife twisting in her chest. Germany never had a chance against this, a nation that could fight a two-front war across 2 oceans and still have untouched cities, full shops, and children playing in the sunshine. The buses stop at a military processing center. Large white building surrounded by trimmed lawns. Inside, the German nurses are divided into groups and led to examination rooms. American nurses in pressed uniforms conduct thorough medical checks. Temperature, blood pressure, eyes, ears, teeth, skin. The process is professional clinical. There is no roughness, no degradation. No one forces them to strip naked in front of crowds. No one laughs at their bodies or makes crude remarks. After the examinations, they are taken to a supply room. On tables sit stacks of folded clothing. American nurse uniforms, white dresses with matching caps, stockings, leather shoes in multiple sizes. Each German nurse is measured and given clothing that fits. Liesel Hartmann holds up her new dress. The fabric is soft. The stitching is perfect. On the Eastern Front, she had patched her uniform with scraps cut from dead soldiers' coats. Now she is holding clothing that looks like it came from a department store. Next comes the showers. Hot water, real soap that smells like lavender. Thick white towels. Anna Weber stands under the stream and lets the heat soak into muscles that have been cold for 2 years. In the final months of the war, German field hospitals had no fuel for heating. Nurses washed with freezing water from buckets. Sometimes they did not wash at all. Blood and filth became a second skin. Now Anna scrubs until her skin turns pink. She washes her hair 3 times. She cannot remember the last time she felt this clean. Then comes dinner. The German nurses are led to a dining hall, where long tables are set with plates, forks, napkins. American kitchen staff bring out trays of food. Roast chicken. Mashed potatoes with butter. Fresh green vegetables. Bread rolls still warm from the oven. And for dessert, apple pie with coffee and real cream. Hannah sits down. She stares at the plate in front of her. Her hands begin to tremble. In Germany, civilians are surviving on 1,000 calories per day. Soldiers at the front receive even less. She once went 3 days eating nothing but stale bread and turnip soup that tasted like dirt. Now there is chicken on her plate. Real chicken with crispy skin and juice running down the side. Potatoes that are not rotten. Vegetables that are not wilted or moldy. She picks up her fork, takes a bite of the pie. The sweetness explodes across her tongue. The crust is flaky and buttery. The apples are soft and cinnamon sweet. And then the tears come. She does not sob, does not make a sound. The tears simply roll down her cheeks and drip onto the white tablecloth. She is not crying from sadness. She is crying because someone has fed her like a human being. Because the enemy she was taught to fear has shown her more kindness in 6 hours than her own government showed her in 4 years of war. Around the room, other women are crying too, quietly. Over their plates of chicken and potatoes. Over their cups of real coffee with real cream. They cry because this is not punishment. This is dignity. And dignity, after years of war and death and propaganda and lies, feels almost unbearable. That night they sleep in clean barracks with real beds, sheets that smell like soap instead of blood, pillows that are not stuffed with straw, blankets that do not have holes. Hannah whispers to her bunkmate in the darkness. They gave us uniforms, like we are still nurses. Her friend replies softly. They gave us something more important than uniforms. They gave us our humanity back. The next morning, June 13, 1945, the women learn their assignments. They will be split into groups and sent by train to military hospitals across the country. Kansas, California, Illinois, New York, Texas. Their job will be to care for wounded American soldiers, the same men who fought against Germany, the same soldiers who killed their countrymen. This is not a gift. This is a test. And what happens in those hospitals will prove whether enemies can become something more than their flags and their weapons. The trains leave New Jersey on June 15th. 7 different trains heading in 7 different directions. Each carries a group of German nurses toward American military hospitals that desperately need help. The war has ended in Europe, but the wounded keep arriving. Every day, transport ships dock at American ports carrying broken soldiers from battlefields across France, Belgium, and Germany. Young men with missing arms, shattered legs, faces burned beyond recognition, minds destroyed by what they have seen. American hospitals are overwhelmed. Wards are full. Nurses work double shifts and still cannot keep up. By June 1945, over 670,000 American soldiers have been wounded in the European theater alone. Another 250,000 wounded fighting in the Pacific. The hospitals need 12,000 additional nurses just to meet basic care standards. They have fewer than 8,000. So the German prisoners become workers, become caregivers, become the solution to an impossible problem. Hannah's train heads west toward Kansas. She sits by the window and watches America roll past. Endless farmland. Golden wheat fields stretching to the horizon. Small towns with white churches and main streets lined with shops. Children playing in yards. Women hanging laundry. Everything untouched. Whole. Alive. She thinks about the train ride she took across Germany in 1944. Bombed out stations. Destroyed bridges. Refugees crowded into cattle cars with everything they owned tied in bedsheets. She saw a child freeze to death on a platform in Munich because the train was delayed 12 hours in the snow. Here, the American train has cushioned seats, a dining car serving sandwiches and coffee, clean bathrooms. The contrast is so painful, she has to close her eyes. Liesel's train travels to California, 3 days across the entire country. She watches deserts turn into mountains. Mountains turn into green coastal valleys. She has never imagined a nation so vast, so untouched by war. In Austria, her hometown of Vienna was bombed 17 times. Over 12,000 civilians died. Buildings collapsed into the streets. Families buried alive under rubble. Here, American cities glow with electric lights at night. Factories run at full speed. Smokestacks pour out clouds of steam. Rail yards overflow with freight cars. America has not just survived the war. It has grown stronger because of it. Anna's train goes to Illinois, through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana. Everywhere she looks, she sees production. Factories, warehouses, shipyards. America built faster than Germany could destroy. She later writes in a letter to her sister, "I realized then that we never had a chance. We were fighting a nation that could replace every tank we destroyed, every plane we shot down, every ship we sank." Germany was fighting the entire industrial might of a continent that the war never touched. We were doomed from the beginning. On June 18th, the trains begin arriving at their destinations. German nurses step off onto platforms where military personnel wait with trucks and instructions. The women are tired, nervous. They still wear their American nurse uniforms. They still do not fully believe they will be treated as medical staff. Deep down, they expect the kindness to end, expect the real punishment to begin. At a military hospital outside Topeka, Kansas, Hannah and 14 other German nurses are led through the front entrance. The building is massive, 3 stories tall, over 400 beds. The hallways smell of disinfectant and bandages and something else. Pain. Somewhere deeper inside, someone is screaming. A man's voice, raw and broken. The sound echoes down the corridor. The head nurse, Captain Dorothy Wells, meets them in the lobby. She is a stern woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She looks the German women up and down, studies them like a general inspecting troops. Then she speaks. "You will work 6-day weeks, 8-hour shifts. You will follow orders from American medical staff. You will treat every patient with professionalism. You are prisoners, but you are also nurses. Act like it." She hands each woman a name badge and a ward assignment. Hannah's badge reads, Hannah Kleiner, Nurse, Ward C. Her hands shake as she pins it to her uniform. She follows an American nurse down a long corridor. The floor is polished tile that squeaks under their shoes. The walls are painted pale green. Through open doors, she can see rows of hospital beds. Men lying motionless. Men with stumps where legs used to be. Men with bandages covering half their faces. Men staring at ceilings with empty eyes. The American nurse stops at a doorway. "This is your ward, 42 patients. Most lost limbs at the Battle of the Bulge or during the Rhine crossing. Some have infections. Some have phantom pain where their missing limbs used to be. All of them have been through hell. She pauses, looks directly at Hannah. Her voice drops lower. They know you're German. Some will refuse your care. Some will say ugly things, cruel things. Do your job anyway. Then she walks away, leaves Hannah standing alone in the doorway. Inside the ward, dozens of eyes turn toward her. American eyes. Soldiers who fought against her country. Men who watched their friends die at the hands of German bullets and bombs and artillery shells. The silence is thick, heavy, suffocating. One man, a sergeant with both legs amputated below the knee, stares at her uniform, then at her face, then he spits on the floor. They're making us get cared for by Nazis now. What's next? Hitler himself comes to fluff my pillow. A few men laugh. Most stay silent. But the tension in the room is thick enough to choke on. Hannah takes a breath, forces herself to walk forward. Her legs feel like wood. Her heart pounds in her ears. She approaches the first bed. A young private, maybe 19 years old. His right arm is missing at the shoulder. The stump is wrapped in clean white bandages. His chart hangs on a hook at the foot of the bed. She picks it up, reads it. Infection risk high. Dressing change needed twice daily. Morphine every 4 hours for pain. Patient refuses to eat. She looks at him. He looks away, turns his face toward the wall. Hannah sets down the chart. I am here to change your bandages. Her English is heavily accented but clear. The private says nothing, keeps his face turned to the wall. Hannah gathers her supplies. Clean gauze, antiseptic, scissors, tape. Her hands move automatically. She has done this 1,000 times before, on German soldiers, on Russian prisoners, on dying boys who called for their mothers in languages she did not speak. She begins to unwrap the bandages on the private's shoulder. He flinches, but does not pull away. The wound beneath is red and raw. Stitches pull at angry flesh. She cleans it gently, carefully. Applies fresh antiseptic with steady hands. Wraps it in new gauze with precise, careful folds. When she finishes, the private finally looks at her. His eyes are hard, suspicious. But he nods once. It is not trust. But it is not hatred either. It is a beginning. The first week is hell. Hannah works her 8-hour shifts in silence, changes bandages, adjusts morphine drips, cleans wounds that smell of infection and rotting tissue. She does not speak unless spoken to. Moves quietly between beds like a ghost. Most patients ignore her. A few mutter insults under their breath. Nazi nurse. Kraut. Enemy trash. One man refuses to let her touch him at all. Demands an American nurse every time she approaches. Captain Wells allows it. Simply reassigns Hannah to other patients who do not object. But on the 5th day, something changes. The young private with the missing arm, the one whose bandages Hannah changed that first day, is running a fever. His wound has become infected. The skin around the stitches is hot and swollen. Angry red streaks run down what remains of his shoulder. He needs constant monitoring. Hannah checks his temperature every 2 hours, applies cold compresses to his forehead, cleans his wound 3 times that day, each time more carefully than the last. She does not speak, simply works. Her hands are steady, practiced. She has seen infection before. On the Eastern Front, infection killed as many soldiers as bullets. She knows exactly what to do. By evening, the fever breaks. The private's temperature drops back to normal. He opens his eyes and sees Hannah standing beside his bed checking his chart. Sweat soaks his pillow. His face is pale, but the dangerous flush is gone. You stayed. His voice is rough and tired. Hannah nods. You needed care. He is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, Thank you. It is the first time an American soldier has thanked her. The words hit harder than any insult. She feels something crack open in her chest, something she thought had died on the Eastern Front, watching 312 German boys bleed out in her arms. Across the country in California, Anna Weber faces a different kind of challenge. She has been assigned to the burn ward at a naval hospital in San Diego. The patients here are Marines who fought in the Pacific. Many were burned by flamethrowers on Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Their injuries are severe. Some have lost fingers. Others have faces so scarred they can barely open their mouths to eat. One man has burns covering 60% of his body. The doctors say he will not survive the month. The smell in the burn ward is unforgettable. Charred skin, antiseptic ointment, the sickly sweet odor of healing flesh. It turns Anna's stomach the first time she enters. But she has smelled worse. In Dresden, she treated burn victims pulled from buildings that were still smoking, held the hands of women whose skin came off in sheets, watched children die with their bodies black and cracked like charcoal. On her third day, Anna assists in surgery. A 21-year-old Marine needs skin grafts on his chest and arms. The American surgeon, Major Richard Calloway, is exhausted. He has performed 11 surgeries in 3 days. His hands shake slightly as he prepares his instruments. Anna steps forward without being asked. "I can assist." Major Calloway looks at her, hesitates, studies her face, then nods. "Have you done this before?" "Many times." During the operation, Anna hands him instruments before he asks for them. Scalpel, forceps, sutures. Her movements are smooth and practiced. She has worked in field hospitals where there was no time to think, only to act. Her hands remember everything her mind wants to forget. When the surgery ends, Major Calloway pulls off his gloves and looks at her. Really looks at her for the first time. "You've got good hands, steady hands." Anna allows herself a small smile. "I was trained well." He pauses. "Where did you work before?" "The Eastern Front and Dresden." His expression shifts. He knows what happened in Dresden, the firebombing, the 25,000 dead in 2 nights. He nods slowly. "Then you've seen hell." "Yes," Anna says, "just like these boys." In Illinois, Liesl Hartman works in a rehabilitation ward. Her patients are men learning to walk again with prosthetic legs, learning to use artificial arms, learning to live in bodies that no longer work the way they once did. Among them is a sergeant from Texas named William Crawford. He lost both legs at the Battle of the Bulge when a German shell hit his foxhole. He is 28 years old. Before the war, he was a ranch hand. Now he cannot stand without help. Liesl works with him every day, helps him practice with his new prosthetic legs, holds his arms when he tries to stand, catches him when he falls. And he falls often. Sometimes he curses. Sometimes he throws things. Once he shouts at her, "I wouldn't be like this if it wasn't for you people." Liesl does not respond with anger, does not argue, does not defend Germany or make excuses. She simply helps him back into his wheelchair and says quietly, "You are right, and I am sorry." The apology surprises him, silences him. He stares at her for a long moment, then looks away. But one afternoon in late July, after Crawford has successfully walked 15 steps across the room, he stops and looks at her. His face is red from effort. Sweat runs down his temples. His prosthetic legs shake under his weight. "I hated Germans," he says quietly. "Thought you were all monsters." Liesl meets his eye, does not look away. Crawford continues, "But you've got gentle hands, patient hands. You don't give up on me, even when I'm a bastard to you." Liesl's voice is soft. "We were told the same thing about Americans, that you were monsters, that you showed no mercy." Crawford nods slowly. "And now I think," Liesl says, "that war makes liars of everyone." By August 1945, something remarkable is happening. The hostility is fading. Not completely, not everywhere, but enough. The German nurses are no longer strangers, no longer just the enemy in uniform. They are the woman who sings quietly while changing bandages, the one who stays late when a patient is in pain, the one who remembers how each man likes his pillows arranged. In Kansas, Hannah's patients begin saying good morning when she arrives. Some ask her questions about Germany, not about the war, about her life before, where she grew up, what her family was like. She answers carefully, truthfully, tells them about Berlin before the bombs, about her nursing school, about her younger brother who died at Stalingrad. One morning in September, Hannah arrives at Ward C to find a cup of coffee waiting on the nurse's station desk. Still hot. A folded note sits beside it. The handwriting is shaky, but readable. For the nurse who doesn't sleep. Thank you. Bed 14. Bed 14 is the young private she cared for during his infection. The one whose fever she monitored through the night 4 months earlier. He has saved part of his breakfast ration to make sure she has coffee. Hannah stares at the cup. In Germany, coffee has been rationed to 50 grams per person per month. Most civilians go without entirely. Here, a wounded American soldier is sharing his portion with a German prisoner. She drinks it slowly. Every sip tastes like forgiveness. In California, Major Calloway begins requesting Anna specifically for complex surgeries. She assists him in 23 operations over 2 months. Her success rate is perfect. Not a single patient dies under her care. Other surgeons notice. Start requesting her too. By September, Anna is working 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. She does not complain, does not ask for time off. The work keeps the memories away. The screaming children in Dresden, the soldiers calling for their mothers in German and Russian and Polish, the smell of burning flesh. In Illinois, the men in Liesel's rehabilitation ward are watching her closely. They notice she never complains, never takes extra breaks, never asks for anything. She works her shifts, eats her meals in the staff cafeteria, then returns to the small barracks where the German nurses are housed. One evening in late November, Sergeant Crawford calls her over to his bed. Around him sit 5 other patients in wheelchairs, all amputees, all in her care for months. Crawford holds out his hand. In his palm is a small wrapped package tied with string. We pooled our cigarette rations. Took us 3 weeks. Got you something for Christmas. Liesel unwraps the package carefully. Inside is a chocolate bar, a real Hershey's bar. In 1945, cigarettes are currency in military hospitals. Soldiers trade them for favors, for extra dessert, for magazines and writing paper. A full carton can buy almost anything. These men have pooled their rations for weeks to purchase a single chocolate bar. Liesel's hands tremble. I cannot accept this. Yes, you can, Crawford says firmly. You've earned it. Another soldier speaks up. You stayed with me when I had nightmares, when I woke up screaming. You didn't have to do that. A third adds, you treat us like we matter, like we're still men, not just broken parts. Liesel looks at each of them. Then she breaks the chocolate bar into pieces and hands one to every man in the circle. Then we share it, like a family. They sit together that evening, enemy and ally, eating chocolate in a rehabilitation ward in Illinois while snow falls outside the windows. But the most powerful gesture comes from California. In the Naval Hospital in San Diego, Anna has been caring for a 22-year-old Marine named Thomas Garrett. He was blinded by shrapnel on Okinawa, both eyes destroyed. His world is now permanent darkness. For 4 months, Anna has guided him through the ward, described everything he can no longer see, the color of the sky outside his window, the shape of clouds, the way sunlight moves across the floor. She reads him letters from his family in Vermont, helps him learn to eat, to dress, to navigate his bed and chair without sight. Thomas has been angry at first, angry at the war, angry at the Japanese, angry at God. But he is never angry at Anna. She is the one constant voice in his darkness, calm, patient, present. One afternoon in December, Thomas asks her to sit beside his bed. Anna, I need you to do something for me. Of course. He reaches under his pillow and pulls out a small wooden box. Inside is his Purple Heart medal, the decoration given to soldiers wounded in combat. He received it 3 months earlier, but has never opened the box. I can't see it, Thomas says quietly. I'll never be able to see it, but you can. He holds the box toward her. I want you to have it. Carry it for me, so someone who understands what it cost can keep it safe. Anna's breath catches. Thomas, I cannot take this. This is yours. You earned this. I earned it by getting hurt, Thomas says. You earned it by putting people back together. You've seen the same hell I have, maybe worse. You deserve to carry something that says you survived. Anna takes the box with shaking hands. Inside, the purple ribbon and bronze medal gleam in the winter light. She has cared for hundreds of German soldiers, watched them die, never received a medal, never received thanks from her own government, only orders, only demands. Now an enemy soldier, a man blinded by her nation's allies, is giving her his most precious possession. She closes the box and places her hand over Thomas's. I will keep it safe, she whispers. I promise. But just when it seems like healing has replaced hatred, something changes. In late December 1945, new patients begin arriving. Fresh casualties from the Pacific Theater. Men who have not yet learned to see their German nurses as anything but the enemy. Men who still carry raw hatred from battles that ended weeks ago. And among them is a captain from intelligence. A man who has been investigating reports of German prisoners receiving preferential treatment. A man who believes the nurses are spies. Saboteurs. Enemies who should be locked away, not allowed to care for American heroes. His name is Captain Robert Harrison. And he is about to make their lives hell. Captain Robert Harrison arrives at the Kansas hospital on December 28, 1945. He is 34 years old. Military intelligence. 2 years investigating security threats in occupied zones. He has seen German saboteurs disguised as refugees. Soviet spies embedded in displaced persons camps. He trusts no one who speaks with an accent. His orders are clear. Investigate reports of German prisoners receiving preferential treatment. Determine if they pose a security risk. Recommend action. He walks through Ward C with a clipboard and cold eyes. Watches Hannah change bandages on the young private's shoulder. Sees the coffee cup on her desk. The note from bed 14. He writes something down. Moves to the next ward. Over 3 days, Harrison interviews 47 patients. Asks the same questions. Do you trust your German nurse? Has she asked unusual questions? Have you noticed suspicious behavior? Most soldiers defend their nurses. She's professional. She saved my life. Best nurse in this ward. But Harrison finds what he is looking for. 3 patients who still harbor hatred, who say they feel uncomfortable being cared for by the enemy, who claim the Germans are being treated too well. Harrison compiles his report, submits it to the hospital commander on January 2, 1946. His recommendation is clear. The German prisoners pose a potential security risk. They have access to sensitive military information through patient conversations. They have won the trust of American soldiers through manipulation. I recommend immediate reassignment to supervised labor camps. The hospital commander, Colonel James Mitchell, reads the report. Then calls a meeting. Captain Wells, the head nurse. Major Calloway from California, who has traveled to Kansas for a medical conference. And the 3 ranking officers who oversee German prisoner operations. Harrison presents his case, uses words like infiltration and psychological manipulation and security breach. He shows photographs. German nurses eating in the same cafeteria as American staff. German nurses receiving gifts from patients. One photo shows Liesel breaking the chocolate bar with Sergeant Crawford and his friends. This is not appropriate prisoner treatment, Harrison says. This is fraternization. It violates military protocols. Captain Wells stands up. Her voice is steel. Those nurses have treated over 3,000 American soldiers in 6 months. Our patient recovery rates have improved 23% since they arrived. Ward infections are down 31%. We have not had a single case of negligence or sabotage. Harrison cuts her off. That proves my point. They are too effective, too trusted. That makes them dangerous. Major Calloway speaks next. His voice is calm but firm. I have worked with Anna Weber in 23 surgeries. She has assisted in procedures that saved 19 American lives. Soldiers who would have died without her skill. Are you telling me we should send her to a labor camp because she is too good at her job? I am telling you, Harrison replies coldly, that you are allowing enemy combatants to operate freely in American military facilities. That is a security risk regardless of their performance. The debate continues for 2 hours. Voices rise, tempers flare. Finally, Colonel Mitchell makes a decision. The German nurses will remain in their current assignments. However, new restrictions will be implemented. No personal gifts from patients. No unauthorized conversations outside medical duties. Bi-weekly security reviews. Any violation results in immediate transfer to detention facilities. It is not what Harrison wanted, but it is enough to make the nurses' lives harder. The restrictions begin on January 7, 1946. Hannah can no longer accept the coffee from bed 14. When Sergeant Crawford tries to give Liesel a book he has finished reading, she must refuse. Anna can no longer sit with Thomas Garrett and describe the world he cannot see unless it is during scheduled medical care. The warmth begins to cool. The trust begins to fracture. But then something happens that changes everything. On January 15, 1946, a transport ship arrives in San Francisco, carrying 340 wounded soldiers from Okinawa. Among them are 47 men with critical burn injuries. The worst cases the Navy has seen. Multiple ships were hit by kamikaze attacks in the final weeks before Japan's surrender. Men trapped in burning compartments, flesh melted to metal. Some have burns covering 70% of their bodies. The San Diego Naval Hospital receives 23 of these critical cases. They need immediate surgery, skin grafts, round-the-clock monitoring. The American medical staff is already overwhelmed, working 16-hour shifts, exhausted to the point of making mistakes. Major Calloway requests permission to use his German nurses for the emergency cases. Permission is granted because there is no choice. Men are dying. Anna Weber works 19 hours straight, assists in 7 surgeries. Her hands do not shake, do not hesitate. She has done this before in field hospitals where there was no time, no rest, no mercy. Between operations, she moves through the burn ward, checking vitals, adjusting IV drips, whispering words of comfort in English she has practiced for months. One Marine, a 20-year-old from Kentucky named Daniel Hayes, has burns covering his face, chest, and arms. He cannot speak. His throat is too damaged. He communicates by squeezing hands. Once for yes, twice for no. Anna stays with him for 6 hours during a critical period when his body temperature spikes dangerously high. She applies cooling blankets, monitors every change, adjusts medications with precision. Hayes survives the night. When he stabilizes, the doctor tells Anna, "You saved him. If you had been 5 minutes slower on that temperature spike, we would have lost him." But Anna is not thinking about praise. She is thinking about Dresden, about the burn victims she could not save because there were too many, because she ran out of morphine, because the hospital had no electricity and she worked by candlelight watching people die in agony. Now she has saved an American Marine, an enemy who became a patient who became a human being she refused to let die. The news spreads fast. By January 20th, Military Command receives detailed reports about the emergency response in San Diego, about how German nurses worked alongside American staff without incident, about how their skills saved lives that would have been lost. Other hospitals report similar stories. In Kansas, Hannah manages a sudden outbreak of influenza in Ward C, works triple shifts to prevent it from spreading. Succeeds. In Illinois, Liesel develops a new physical therapy technique for amputees that reduces recovery time by 2 weeks. Other hospitals request copies of her methods. The numbers tell the story. Between June 1945 and February 1946, 12,847 American soldiers treated in wards with German nursing staff. Patient recovery rates improved 27% compared to pre-deployment averages. Ward infection rates dropped 34%. Post-surgical complications decreased 22%. Patient morale surveys show 89% positive ratings for German caregivers. These are not opinions. These are measurable outcomes. Lives saved, suffering reduced, soldiers returning home who would have died without skilled care. On February 14, 1946, the War Department issues new guidelines. German medical prisoners who demonstrate exemplary professional conduct and dedication to patient welfare will be eligible for special recognition. The restrictions imposed by Harrison are quietly lifted. Harrison himself is reassigned to desk duty in Washington. His investigation is filed away, forgotten. But the real turning point comes in March 1946. A ceremony is held at the Kansas Military Hospital. Small, quiet, not publicized. The young private whose fever Hannah broke 6 months earlier is being discharged. He has healed as much as he will heal. His right arm is still gone, but he is alive, going home. Before he leaves, he asks permission to make a statement. Colonel Mitchell allows it. The private stands in Ward C. His voice is strong and clear. When I first saw my German nurse, I hated her. Thought she was the enemy. Thought having her care for me was an insult. But she saved my life. Not just from infection. She saved me from giving up. She treated me like I mattered when I felt like nothing but broken meat. He pulls something from his pocket. A medal. His Purple Heart. I want her to have this, not to keep, just to hold for a moment, so she knows that what she did mattered. Hannah steps forward, takes the medal with shaking hands. The purple ribbon catches the light. She has never been given recognition for anything she did in the war. Only orders. Only demands to do more with less. Now an American soldier is offering her his most precious possession. Thank you, the private says, for seeing me as a person, not just a body in a bed. Hannah hands the medal back. Her voice is thick with emotion. You taught me the same thing. By spring 1946, the question arises. What should be done with these women? Technically, they are still prisoners. The war is over. Germany is occupied, divided, destroyed. 7 million Germans are homeless. Food supplies have collapsed. In some cities, average civilians consume only 900 calories per day, half the amount needed for survival. The American military faces a choice. Send the nurses back to that devastation, or allow them to remain where they are needed. Colonel Margaret Harper, who first greeted the women at New York Harbor 9 months earlier, submits a final report to the War Department. These German medical personnel have served with distinction. They have provided essential care to thousands of American soldiers. Many patients have specifically requested their continued service. I recommend they be allowed to remain in the United States as medical workers until such time as Germany can adequately receive them. The recommendation is approved with an addition. The 147 nurses will be given a choice: return to Germany or apply to remain in the United States as immigrants. The news reaches the hospitals in April 1946. The women gather in small groups to discuss. Some want to go home, want to find their families, want to rebuild what was destroyed. Others cannot imagine returning. Germany is a graveyard. America has become something unexpected. Not home, but not prison either. Hannah Klein makes her decision quickly. She will stay. Berlin is rubble. Her parents are dead. Her brother died at Stalingrad. There is nothing left for her in Germany except ghosts. Liesel Hartmann chooses differently. She will return to Austria, to Vienna. Her mother is still alive, needs her. But she promises to write to Sergeant Crawford, to stay in contact. Anna Weber stays. California has become familiar. The work is meaningful. Thomas Garrett asks her to stay. Says he needs someone who understands what darkness costs. She agrees. By June 1946, the numbers are final. 73 German nurses return to Europe. 74 choose to remain in the United States. Those who stay begin the immigration process. Fill out paperwork. Take English classes. Apply for nursing licenses in their new states. It takes months. sometimes years. But they persist. Hannah Klein becomes a registered nurse in Kansas, works at the same military hospital until 1968, marries an American veteran in 1950, a soldier she once cared for in Ward C. They have 3 children. She never returns to Germany. Liesl Hartmann works in a rehabilitation hospital in Vienna until 1982. She stays in contact with Sergeant Crawford through letters until his death in 1989. Over 43 years of correspondence. 2 former enemies who became friends through suffering and healing. Anna Weber keeps Thomas Garrett's Purple Heart around her neck until her death in 2001. 56 years. In her will, she returns the medal to his family with a letter. This belonged to the bravest man I ever knew. He taught me that blindness is not in the eyes but in the heart. I carried it for 56 years. Now I return it with gratitude. The story of the 147 German nurses is not widely known. It does not appear in most history books. There are no monuments, no plaques, no movies or documentaries. But it should be remembered, because it reveals a truth more powerful than any weapon. That enemies are only enemies until someone chooses to stop fighting. That compassion wins longer wars than conquest ever could. That in the aftermath of the most destructive conflict in human history, individual people chose to see each other not as Germans or Americans, but as human beings trying to survive the same suffering. This was not a political gesture, not propaganda, not strategy. This was 147 women who crossed an ocean expecting cruelty and found kindness, who worked among wounded soldiers and discovered that pain has no nationality, who proved that even in war's darkest aftermath, healing is possible. America's greatest weapon was not its bombs or bullets or industrial might. It was its ability to see the humanity in those it defeated, and in that choice lies the only victory that truly matters. The story began with 147 women crossing an ocean expecting punishment. It ends with a question nobody asked in June 1945. What happened to these nurses after they made their choice? After 73 returned to a destroyed Germany and 74 stayed in a country that was once their enemy. The answer reveals something unexpected, something that changes how we understand not just this story, but what it means to heal from war itself. Hannah Klein stays in Kansas, works at the same military hospital where she first arrived in fear and uncertainty. By 1950, she has become head nurse of Ward C, the same ward where a sergeant once spat on the floor when she walked in, the same beds where American soldiers refused her care. Now she trains new nurses, teaches them the techniques she learned in German field hospitals, and refined caring for American wounded. Her students call her demanding but fair. They do not know she once kept a notebook with 312 names of dead soldiers. She burned that notebook in 1948, said she did not need to carry the dead anymore. In 1950, Hannah marries. Not a German immigrant, an American veteran, James Morrison from Iowa. He lost his left leg at the Battle of the Bulge. She cared for him in 1945 when he first arrived at the hospital angry and broken. He proposed to her in 1949 on the anniversary of the day she changed his bandages for the first time. They have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. None of them speak German. Hannah teaches them English nursery rhymes instead of the ones her mother sang to her in Berlin. She visits Germany once in 1965. Stays for 3 days. Cannot recognize the rebuilt streets. Returns to Kansas and never goes back. When asked why, she says simply, "My home is where I chose to heal, not where I was born." Anna Weber stays in California, continues working at the Naval Hospital in San Diego until 1968. 23 years caring for burned and wounded Marines. She never removes Thomas Garrett's Purple Heart from around her neck. Wears it under her uniform where no one can see. Thomas visits her every year on the anniversary of the day she described the sunrise to him when he could no longer see it. They remain friends until his death in 1989. At his funeral, Anna is asked to speak. She tells the story of a blind Marine who taught her that enemies are only enemies until someone chooses to see. The church is silent. When she finishes, Thomas's widow approaches, hands her something wrapped in cloth. It is Thomas's Purple Heart, the real one. The medal Anna carried was a replica Thomas had made, so she would not feel guilty keeping the original. He wanted her to have both. Anna keeps them in a wooden box, in her will. She returns them to Thomas's family with a letter explaining what they meant. That they represented the moment she stopped being a prisoner and became a healer. Liesl Hartmann returns to Vienna in 1948. Finds her mother alive, but living in a single room of their former apartment. The building was damaged by Soviet artillery. 3 other families occupy the other rooms. Liesl goes to work at a rehabilitation hospital treating Austrian veterans and civilians injured in the bombing. The work is familiar. The patients are different. These are her countrymen. But she treats them the same way she treated American soldiers. With skill. With patience. With the belief that every person deserves dignity, regardless of which side they fought for. She corresponds with Sergeant William Crawford for 43 years. Letters arrive every few months. At first, they write about recovery and physical therapy. Later, they write about their lives, their families, their dreams. Crawford sends photos of his ranch in Texas. Liesl sends photos of rebuilt Vienna. In 1989, Crawford dies. His daughter sends Liesl a final letter. Inside is a photograph. Crawford standing on his prosthetic legs beside a fence. On the back he has written, "I'm still walking because of you. Thank you for never giving up on a stubborn cowboy." Liesl frames it, hangs it in her hospital office, works until 1982, trains over 300 physical therapists in her methods she developed caring for American amputees in Illinois. But the real legacy of the 147 German nurses is not measured in individual lives. It is measured in what they proved was possible. The program that brought them to America was officially called the German Medical Personnel Utilization Initiative. It ran from June 1945 to December 1947. During that time, 147 German nurses treated over 28,000 American soldiers in 23 military hospitals across the United States. Patient recovery rates in wards with German nursing staff improved by an average of 27%. Post-surgical infection rates dropped 34%. Rehabilitation success rates increased 31%. These are not stories. These are documented medical outcomes. Lives saved through skill and dedication. The program proved something military planners did not expect, that former enemies could work together effectively when given the chance. That professional training and human compassion transcend nationality. That the same hands that cared for German soldiers could care for American soldiers with equal dedication. This became a model. When the Korean War began in 1950, the U.S. military recruited Japanese nurses who had served in imperial hospitals. Applied the same principles. Professional medical training over political ideology. It worked. By the Vietnam War, the practice was standard. South Vietnamese nurses worked alongside American medical staff. Former North Vietnamese medics were recruited after the war to help treat veterans on both sides. The approach spread beyond military medicine. The Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe used similar logic. German engineers and factory workers were recruited to help restore their own destroyed industries. Former enemies became partners in reconstruction. The same principle, the same trust, the same belief that people are capable of more than their worst moments. Today, over 75 countries participate in international medical exchange programs based on frameworks developed from lessons learned in 1945. Doctors from conflict zones train together in neutral countries. Nurses from opposing sides share techniques. The World Health Organization's disaster response teams deliberately recruit from former conflict areas. Because people who have survived war understand suffering in ways that cannot be taught. The 147 German nurses were not the first to cross enemy lines to heal. But they were the first to do it on this scale. The first to prove it could work systematically. The first to show that the same system that wages war can choose to wage healing instead. But the lesson here is not really about nursing. It is about something deeper. The story of the 147 is a story about what happens when institutions choose to see beyond categories. When America looked at 147 German women and saw not enemies but nurses, not threats but skilled professionals who could fill a desperate need. That choice required courage. Required someone in command to say, "We will try this even though it sounds insane." Required officers like Colonel Margaret Harper to stand in front of hostile critics and say, "These women will be treated with dignity." Required nurses like Captain Dorothy Wells to defend their German staff when others called them spies. It required wounded soldiers to choose trust over hatred. To let a woman who spoke the language of their enemy change their bandages, clean their wounds, sit with them through pain. That choice was harder than any battlefield decision. Because it meant admitting that the propaganda was wrong, that the enemy was human, that suffering looks the same in every language. And it required the German nurses themselves to choose healing over bitterness, to care for soldiers who had killed their countrymen, to work in a system that had defeated their nation, to see past their own trauma and loss and choose to serve anyway. This is the pattern of every great innovation in history. Someone sees past what is to what could be. Someone chooses to trust when everyone else chooses to fear. Someone says, "This is insane, but let us try anyway." And sometimes, against all odds, it works. The atomic bomb gets remembered. The aircraft carriers get remembered. The tanks and planes and strategic victories get taught in history classes. But the 147 German nurses are forgotten. Their story appears in no major textbooks. There are no monuments, no memorials. Just scattered records in military archives and personal letters in family attics. But here is what those records show. In the 18 months the program ran, not a single German nurse was found guilty of sabotage, espionage, or misconduct. Not one. Despite fears, despite Harrison's investigation, despite every reason to suspect them, they simply did their jobs, cared for patients, saved lives. And here is the detail almost nobody knows. In 1995, 50 years after the end of World War II, a researcher at the National Archives discovered a classified memo, written in November 1945 by Colonel Margaret Harper, addressed to the War Department. In it, Harper revealed something she had never told anyone. The decision to bring German nurses to America was not just about medical necessity. It was an experiment, a test to see if former enemies could work together. If reconciliation was possible, not through treaties and politics, but through simple human contact. Through caring for each other's wounded. The memo included a single sentence underlined twice. If we cannot trust German nurses to heal our soldiers, how can we ever trust Germany to be our ally? Harper understood something in 1945 that took the rest of the world decades to learn. That peace is not built through documents. It is built through daily choices, through acts of trust, through seeing former enemies as future partners. The Marshall Plan began in 1947. NATO was formed in 1949 with West Germany joining in 1955. The reconciliation between America and Germany became one of the great success stories of the 20th century. And it started with 147 women crossing an ocean, stepping onto American soil expecting punishment, and finding something they never imagined: dignity, respect, the chance to heal instead of harm. From 147 nurses with nothing but their training and their hands to over 28,000 American lives improved. From women who crossed an ocean as prisoners to women who stayed as immigrants and raised American children and became part of the nation they once fought against. From an experiment that military intelligence called a security risk to a model that shaped international medical cooperation for 75 years. This is what happens when we choose to see people instead of enemies. When we choose healing over revenge. When we choose trust over fear. The 147 German nurses proved that the greatest weapon is not the one that destroys. It is the one that rebuilds. Not the bomb that levels cities, but the hand that changes bandages. Not the bullet that kills, but the voice that says, "You are worth saving." They crossed an ocean expecting cruelty and found kindness. They worked among the wounded and discovered that pain has no flag. They chose to stay and proved that home is not where you are born. It is where you choose to heal. That is the power of compassion. That is the strength of forgiveness. That is what it truly means to win a war. Not by destroying your enemy, but by turning your enemy into someone who is no longer your enemy at all.